No, it's definitely not free. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
Good.
fail. There we go.
I had a solid pop. Okay, so I do have kind of an interesting. Oh man, I should have brought it out. Actually, I have kind of an interesting marketing pitch, but there's this really cool new product that I found, and I'm not being paid by them, obviously. But they're like, if you ever get frustrated drinking beer out of the top of a can, and it's like sharp and it's annoying, and like sometimes it cuts your tongue if you're not careful after a few beers. So this guy invented a can opener that goes on top, and then you just roll the
Right.
can around in it, and the top comes off. And I just got one. I'm not using it this time, but it's a very fun $20 thing to have. So I highly recommend it.
I love those little gizmos. Did you see my bottle opener?
No, that's cool though.
It's just, you know what it is? I think it's just a Hot Wheel. I
Nice.
think, yeah, it's Hot Wheels. So the Hot Wheels has a line of like cars that are also bottle openers.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's awesome.
For
So
the kid inside.
exactly. It's awesome. Good to see you, man. Did you know this is season 4 of the Brands and Brews Marketing Podcast?
It's wild, man. That's wild. I can't believe it's been 4 years already. It's insane.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making your annual visit to the show. So
That really is true, isn't it? Lately, and that's a fair challenge.
you are the co-host of this show. At least that's what the intro still says. So
Yeah,
just in case you know. So I appreciate you for making that one annual visit. By the way, this is a Brands and Brews Marketing Podcast where we talk about marketing while drinking beer. And I'm Jesse, and I'm here with Kirill. So cheers,
fuck
buddy.
yeah, man. I'm glad to be back. It's been a little while. It's been a turbulent time.
Awesome. Well, you know the show because you're on it once a year. You want to start with what you're drinking and why you chose that beer?
Yeah. So this year I've decided to go with I actually have two different beers. I'm kind of cheating today, but I have the Outer Range Colorado Rockies local brewery. They have really good IPAs, and I know a lot of people are like, IPA, it's overdone or whatever. But these guys have very different IPAs, and they have a lot of them, and they have basically small runs. And I always talk about Mr. B's, our local kind of specialty liquor store, and they have these really cool, unique beer selections. So I don't know if this one's super unique because I haven't been drinking beer lately, so I don't know if this one is new or not. But it's a great little beer. And then I also have something called Beer for Tacos, and that is a Goze style beer with lime juice and salt added. And it is, I want to say it's also local to Colorado. Oh no, Chicago. But we'll forgive them for that.
Yeah, those beers, those like Mexican beers that have like already like a lime something in them are kind of popular. I've had a few of those. I'm just drinking nothing fancy here. Like it's really hard to find bottles these days, as you know, and like thank God, New Belgium from Colorado still does Voodoo Ranger. In fact, it's probably like the only bottled beer I could find in the store.
That's wild.
If you're looking at a grocery store anyway, you have to go to a liquor store and probably still a hard time finding bottles.
Do you
But
still prefer bottles over cans? And what's the
there's
reasoning for that?
something psychological. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know if maybe it flows a little bit better. It's like less foam in your mouth maybe. Because of the I don't know, just the way that it flows out of the bottle, So I think that has something to do with it. I don't know. I just like a bottle. I don't know what it is. It's there's a lot of advantages for the can, right? So you block out the sun, so the shelf life is longer.
Yeah.
It's easier to package. It fits in my little fridge where I'm allowed to put all my beer. Like I get a lot more cans in there than bottles, of course.
Nice.
So logistics, it all makes sense. So a lot of advantages for cans, but something about a bottled beer, man, I don't know.
It's old school.
It is old school. Yeah, and it's
interesting. I used to be an uneducated snob, and I just assumed the quality of the bottled beer was better. But it actually turns out that canned beer is just as good if it's packaged properly.
Yeah, it's
Turns out
actually
it's
canned beer is actually better because I mean, uh, a beer guy told me like and he was on this podcast. He told me like uh depending on the bottle, like if you have a clear bottle, like Corona for example, and if you ever had like a skunk beer or skunk taste, like Corona, like Corona kind of can have that if it's been on the shelf for a long time. It's because the sun, you know, tarnishes the flavor of the beer. A brown bottle beer is like you're putting like sunglasses on a bottle, but a can, you're completely blocking out the sun. So that's or the light, I should say ultraviolet light. So that makes the beer last longer. So that's what I learned last year.
that may be the first piece of educational content we've ever had on the show in
Always,
4 years.
yes. I know, right? Yeah, dude. So canned beer is actually where it's at, but I still like drinking out of a bottle. I don't know what it is. It's
Fair
just
enough. Fair
old
enough.
school. All right, we're going to talk about B2B and B2C marketing. So before we kind of dive in, should we explain what each one of those are? Do you want to
Yeah, sure.
take a stab at one of them?
Yeah, so there's a few different things, right? There's B2B, which is business to business marketing, and that is when a business either sells products or services to another business, essentially. And that's probably the simplest way to explain it.
Yeah. And then B2C is just directly to the consumer. So this beer, if you're buying beer from like a store, that's B2C. Retail is B2C. A service like you're in the legal industry, right? So
Correct.
that's usually B2C, unless I guess there's always B2B ways to do legal, right? Business law, I'm sure. Um, or B2B can be, what's some examples for B2B? I'm an SEO agency, so that's B2B. I have a lot of B2B clients. Most of my clients are in the B2B space. So a lot of them do like IT services, um, software as a services. Yeah, so B2B is more of that direct business to business relationship. Um, there's a lot of crossovers on marketing for B2B and B2C, and there's also some differences. So,
There's, of course, also B2B2C, which is a newish quote unquote thing, but
I
there,
don't even
there's
want to go there.
there's also B2B2C to B, back to B. The consumers are now selling back to the business.
Of course they are. You know what? And someone's like, "Hey, we got to define that somehow." So yeah, dude. Some challenges for both of these. So, um, B2B, in the world of B2B, there's the pressure of generating leads. That's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of B2B marketing, and I think most B2B marketers are kind of in that world of like, we're trying to generate leads to grow a sales pipeline, so we have the possibility of growing sales. And the reason why a lot of it is focused on leads and not like the actual revenue or sales is because generally in B2B, the sales cycle is longer, right? It usually takes longer before for the customer journey to go from the first time they see the product or service from marketing collateral to the point where they actually meet with a salesperson and then actually buy the product. For the most part, takes longer than B2C, where B2C can be a lot of different things. It could be a compulsive thing, it could be an emotional attachment, and it can be a lot of different things. So the cool thing with B2C, there is because of the sales cycle, generally, by the way, the sales process is actually usually shorter. It's usually easier to locate like this marketing activity actually led to this sale, also revenue. Do you find that in fact, or am I talking through my ass?
No, I think you're I think you're spot on. I guess I would say the difference between B2B and B2C, you can have longer sales cycles in B2C as well. If you think about car sales, for example, you
Sure.
may, have several weeks up to a month potentially sales cycle. I think one of the biggest differences, though, is that typically the decision-making process in B2B is more involved because you have stakeholders, you may have potentially committees, there's a whole chain of approval processes. So you are potentially marketing to several different types of ideal client profiles at the same time to get to that same sale. Whereas in B2C, the consumer is the decision maker, and there may be one or two consumers, right? Maybe husband and wife, whatever. But typically, the decision making process is more straightforward there. Um, yeah, but B2C is pretty different too, right? You've got like e-com, which is very focused on just like scaling, website traffic and essentially selling things, like you said, impulse buying and things like that, which is very fast paced. And then in our legal services industry, typically you could have a much longer sales cycle than somebody coming in making a snap decision. They're typically evaluating multiple different vendors. So our B2C is a little bit more close to B2B probably in terms of the customer journey. But, like you said, there's some overlap for sure there.
Yeah, absolutely.
At
And
the end
it's
of the day, it's like the one thing that I like to say is that whether it's B2B or B2C, we're still marketing to people, right? We're still
right.
talking to the problems that they're facing, helping overcome pain points, and ultimately, hopefully, getting them to a place where we've resolved their problem and they're in a better point in their life. So,
Yeah, and there's still that crossover of like, building trust in a product or a service. So there's a lot of like crossovers in just how you do your marketing. Um, but there are also some well, actually let's do this. Let's talk about like our experiences in B2B and B2C. Um, like for me, like I started in the agency world, whereas where our focus, our clients, the actual marketing that we were actually doing was to B2C. And then I changed roles and I had multiple different jobs, just like you, where I went to B2C, went to B2B, B2C to B2B, and then I created my own agency where now I'm doing both. So as a agency owner, um, most of so I have clients that I'm doing B2C. I have clients that are in the B2B space, which are most of my clients. And then for my own business, whereas I'm doing marketing and sales for my own business, right? I'm selling a B2B service I'm doing marketing for my agency with a B2B strategy. So that's kind of like been my timeline. I probably spent I would bet you it's close to 50-50 of my time and so I feel like I have equal amount of experience in both. What about you?
my experience is really primarily in B2B. I started my career, I think we've talked about this before, but I started my career at Crocs, the shoe company. And there I worked for a little startup inside of Crocs itself. But I spent probably 2 years doing that. And then I went right from that into 6 years doing B2B for a therapy company here in Denver. It was a very cool company. Then I went agency side and worked on lead gen with you, obviously, at what was it called? Smart Reach Digital,
Mhm.
the agency. And then from there, I actually went to B2C again, working in ultra high net worth property investment fund, essentially working on exclusive vacation rentals and things like that for a short stint. And then I went back into into tech. I actually really missed B2B. I think it's a kind of an interesting challenge strategically, and there's a lot of interesting things that can be done there. So I spent probably another 8 years in B2B, and then now I'm back to B2C. I spent 8 years just ripping on B2C, and now here I am, right
Right
back at
back in it. Yeah, I know, man. It's yeah. Um do you remember like start with B2B here and then we'll talk about B2C, but like let's talk about some like challenges in the B2B space. Like um one thing I think in is always it's comes down to for most businesses, like I said at the beginning, is lead generation is kind of the big thing there as far as generating interest that could possibly interest or opportunities that can potentially turn into a sale. And that's for most people that do B2B marketing, that's the primary goal. That actually focuses a lot of challenges because like it's not a close path to revenue, so it gets a little muggy when it comes to down to like what's the source and then who's responsible for what, because there is that competitive environment for most companies, most B2B companies, of marketing and sales, like who's the winner here. And there's not always that collaboration where it's like, hey, we're all on one team. Um, so that's always like, I feel like that one of the biggest challenges in the B2B space.
Hmm.
And when I'm actually doing agents as an agency, I feel like I have another barrier too. When I'm doing services, sometimes I'm competing with my customer's marketing agency because it's usually the sales team or someone that's in charge of sales, like a chief revenue officer that hired me. So I'm in this weird triangle of providing B2B services where I feel like I'm competing with the marketing team that works for the business,
Hmm.
and we're all being judged differently. So I'm just like, why can't we all work together? Right? And
That's
like we're all trying
why
to
can't
achieve the same goal here.
we
So
all get along is the famous question in any organization.
exactly. And then that's kind of like a bigger business problem because like everyone's trying to like really find like everyone's trying to measure like we got this sale, so who gets the credit. And the reason why that's important is because you have a budget for marketing, you have a budget for sales, and you want to see what's working the best, or which part of your whole machine is actually generating revenue. And that's usually where you get in trouble with B2B. I'm sure that happens in B2C, but it's really kind of a traditional regular problem for most B2Bs, at least from my experience. What about you?
Oh man, I don't know where to start, man. Like, what are the challenges in marketing? There's like a million different
Thousand.
challenges, but I think really with B2B or B2C, the the challenge that I see the most is like noise and just like cutting through the noise to understand, what works and what doesn't work. There's a million different tactics out there that you can utilize. There's a gazillion tools. I think we were gonna do like a tools draft for this until I just realized that there are literally like 10,000 marketing tools right
Yeah.
now, and just understanding what's the right tool and the Martech uh, whole thing of managing the technology that you utilize is that's one challenge. And I feel like B2B companies tend to lean a lot more on tech. I
Hmm.
may be wrong about that. It's an assumption that I'm making, but we utilize tech quite a bit in our law practice, but we are unusual in that sense. So just trying to identify what works and what doesn't, I think, can be a challenge, especially when you have multiple targets that you're marketing toward and trying to understand what works for them and what doesn't. There's a lot of testing involved. So yeah, I would say, obviously working together and collaboratively is a challenge, but on B2B, just getting through to people with the right tools, with the right message, and doing it all in a cohesive way, I think is a challenge for sure.
Let's talk about some things, what works in B2B traditionally. So there's things like thought leadership. So thought leadership is one of those terms that gets used a lot, and generally you're building trust over a long period of time with usually by creating some sort of demand, and that demand is created by providing value, right? Like you're throwing value and you're looked at as like an expert in your space, in your industry. So eventually, when people are ready to buy and they have all of these options, they look at you and go, you seem to know what you're doing. I follow you or your company. It seems like you have a lot of trust and credibility. Then I'm going to at least start the buying process with you. And that's kind of, I don't know, my explanation of thought leadership. B2C, that can happen the same way, but again, it could also be they both can be by a need, right? But it seems like B2C can be a quicker compulsion to a need, or like that, more of like, I need this now, it's available, um, I have the budget, I'm going to buy it, right? Whereas that B2B world, just because, probably like what you said at the beginning, there's more than one decision makers, and so having a good thought leader and having more social proof of your product or service, it makes it a little easier process to get a bunch of people, a bunch of decision makers on board to actually commit to something like that. What do you think there?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, for the most part, uh, thought leadership is definitely a great path to build that trust and credibility across the whole pillar of folks that you are marketing to, whether they are a decision maker, a gatekeeper, or whatever. But um, providing value to each one of those roles through content or tools that you're generating definitely is a great way to do it. We actually do the same thing in B2C as well. On the legal side, one of the ways that we position our firm to potential clients is by providing a ton of resources. Right, there's the law is a very complicated system, and it can be challenging to understand and navigate. So we do our best to provide as many resources in an easily digestible format as we can, and that really helps build value for our potential clients and positions us as a leader in the space. But in terms of, like, you asked what works well, um, I think there's a lot. I think both B2B and B2C are data driven. I'm actually finding that B2C is more data driven than I anticipated, especially having been out of the industry for a while. We are very, very heavy on data and metrics and decision making from analytics and things like that. But I kind of, the interesting thing about B2B is people say it has a bad rep for being boring, quote unquote. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about B2B is it's actually kind of the wild west of marketing in a lot of ways, because it's much less strictly regulated than a B2C is, right? There are consumers' rights, there's GDPR, there's email opt-in requirements, there's can spam, there's all sorts of stuff that puts handcuffs on B2C marketers, and for good reason.
Right.
There's a lot of abuse going on there. So I think there are a lot of safety guidelines that restrict some of the creativity in B2C, but in B2B, you have unlimited freedom to really, like, test whatever the hell you want to do, basically. And we saw that with SEO in the early days of the wild west of the SEO. We saw that with social media, where I remember, like, working at the therapy startup that I was at, and I generated something like 20,000 followers for our company just organically over the
Mhm.
course of like 6 months. That's literally not even possible anymore. So it's the interesting thing about B2B is you can find these little loopholes, and as long as you are focused on, you have a strategy that you're focused on, but you're also exploring opportunities to win in kind of this guerrilla warfare kind of stuff. We saw email was dominant, and I think email still dominates in B2B. I don't know how well it works for B2C, but for B2B, it's still a very solid tool. And I remember going to, Denver Digital Summit, like, probably 8 years, 10 years ago at this point, and just hearing, oh, email's dead. Nobody's doing email marketing anymore. And it's still crushing it 10 years later, right? So
Right.
there's a lot of different channels that can be tried in B2B. And we see SMS marketing for B2B. We see email marketing. We see social media marketing. There's a lot of B2B players that are doing stuff on TikTok, and kind of pushing the limits of what traditionally B2B has done, and been kind of a stuffy area to play in. But I think that, with our I hesitate to call us a younger generation of marketers at this point, but when we
Hmm.
were coming up in that early digital marketing, there's a lot that has changed in the B2B marketing world that has made it a lot more creative and a lot more free.
Yeah, let's talk about B2C. So for me right now, like, I feel like B2C, there's not too many industries I haven't worked in, but right now, like, if I'll just name off like my current clientele that are in the B2C space. So I have a handful of lawyers. So I have a handful of law firms, I think three or four law firms that mostly do SEO, and it's local SEO, and I love them. I love working with lawyers because uh, they get it, right. They get the budget. They understand a lot of like sales opportunities for them actually, or cases, come through like Google search. And so there's a high value with SEO and in like Google ads. And so there's already like that need that they understand the value of ranking on the first page of Google, for example. So that's a big chunk of my clients. I also have a handful of e-commerce. And the cool thing with e-commerce is like you have a lot of products, especially if they have a lot of products. But products can be like if you have like one product, but you have like 20 different colors in that product, now you have 20 products, right? So there's a lot of like product pages. So you could actually do a lot of like product SEO in that circumstance. And I also find that's a really great industry to be in because there's just a lot of analytics because like a sale usually happens on the website. It's a shorter process. You can link that to like, oh, this directly came from SEO or this directly came from
Yeah.
PPC. That's the beauty of e-commerce, why I really, really like it,
Yeah.
because the analytics are very trustworthy. And then I have like gym owners. I used to be in the fitness industry. Some people know that. So like I work with like martial arts studios and then personal training studios. Whereas that's usually, again, it's kind of like legal, where it's like they really depend on local SEO, almost like neighborhood SEO in a circumstance. Like especially like if you're here in Denver, where there's like a personal training studio, maybe two of them on every like square block, the entire metro area. It's very competitive. So like it's literally like your world is within like a mile, like a mile radius from your fitness studio. So it's very, very localized. So local SEO is another thing that works very, very well there. But B2C is this. There's a lot of challenges, but for me, with my experience, especially with my current clientele, the one thing I do like about it is that sales cycle is usually shorter, and you could really like dissect where when a sale happens, you could really focus on, okay, it came from there. Whereas with my B2B clients, HubSpot might say one thing for a sale. Salesforce might say another thing. My Google Analytics will say something completely different, and you're just like, I don't know. It's probably one of those,
The,
but it's most likely it's probably like 5 different things that
the
led
truth
to a
is in the
sale.
middle somewhere.
Exactly. So that's always something I struggle with because in the agency world, you have to prove why you deserve that next month's check. And so the way you prove it is like through analytics. And so with B2C, I find it's a lot easier than B2B, especially with a shorter sales cycle. So that's my experience.
Have you tried wearing a gorilla suit just to like the analytics meeting and then, making monkey sounds instead of explaining anything and see how that plays out?
I mean, I only do that when like I usually do that at the end of the month because I'm on a month-to-month cycle for most of my clients. So, assuming they fulfill their contract and like it's going to be a slow month, heck yeah, I'll put a gorilla suit on and I could throw a sign up and down and catch it behind my back, dude.
That's
I've been
cool.
working on that.
That's
Yeah.
cool, actually. You must have a lot of free time on the agency side to learn sign spinning as well. You're
Well,
like
yeah. When you're an
master,
age,
you're master of all trades.
you have to, man. You have to. Whatever it takes to keep your clients happy, that's what I'll do. And yeah, sometimes you got to get a little desperate.
We
So
didn't
that
even
requires a gorilla suit.
we didn't really even talk about you selling out because it's been the last time I was on the show was so long ago that you hadn't even started your agency yet. I don't think so. This is like a pretty big change for you, and you've been at it like just about a year almost.
Yeah, so a little over a year now, and yeah, things are going really good, man. So I should have done this a very long time ago, but you know, at the same time, I'm really glad I had all that experience with working at all the different companies and all the different challenges that I had, because I apply that knowledge on a day-to-day basis for sure. But man, I love just, when I want to get something done, I just do it. I think it's one of my favorite things.
I love
And
that, man. I love that. This, by the way, this completely non-promotional podcast brought to you by Spearpoint Marketing.
hey, thank you. Yeah, yeah. That would be my company, by the way. I appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, man. So, anything else with B2B and B2C?
Anything else? You wanted to talk about like social media and
That's
content
true.
marketing and stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know that there's a whole lot to dig into. I mean,
Yeah.
B2B, again, there's just so much overlap. Like you had made a note here that says that LinkedIn is a great B2B resource, but one thing that we're realizing is that LinkedIn is great for B2C as well, especially for legal services, right? As
Right.
professionals hang out on LinkedIn, and it's a great opportunity for us to generate thought leadership and generate leads. I guess I would probably delineate it in saying that social media for us is not a lead generation tool. It is
For
mostly a brand
yeah.
awareness, top of mind awareness. And that's something that I'm not really used to coming from the B2B world, especially in niche industries. You typically are already well known. So you're not like really focused all that much on brand awareness. Whereas in B2C, in a very saturated space like the legal industry or fitness studios or whatever, brand awareness is huge, right? And
Huge. Right.
I've always kind of shat on it because it's the analytics on brand awareness are a little bit tricky. It's you're just kind of like, are we throwing money into the wind here? Like, what's the recall? Like, how do you test top of mind and recall and all that stuff? There's some multi-touch attribution models, and you can get pretty complicated with tracking awareness. But at the end of the day, with all the tools that we've always used, you kind of know that the data is not always super accurate. And
Hmm.
like you said, in different platforms, you get different numbers. So it's not always super straightforward. But social media, I think for on B2B definitely can be used for lead generation, but for B2C, it's more of an awareness play, I think, for the most part, unless it's e-com, in which case you're straight up generating leads and closing the sale potentially in the same instance, like my unfortunate Instagram impulse buying habits that my wife actually is trying to work out with me on. So, um, but yeah, it's interesting. What do you think about what do you think about social media and all that?
Man, like I think you really defined that very well. I mean, really the data, right? Because I'm always looking at the data, and I know brand awareness is important, and I preach that a lot because that's how a lot of times that's how I have to sell my SEO services, because SEO is not an instant. You don't get instant results from SEO. It takes time, and you have to build a brand first before you could generate revenue. But really, the only metric that matters for especially like small business owners is like the only metric that they count on is the revenue or the check that they got in their bank account, right? It's the only number that they actually trust. So seeing impressions or like in social media, like engagement metrics and all that stuff too, it's like, okay, like how does that lead to my my revenue? So that's always the trick with social media. um but there's still like that, it's just common sense for marketing, whereas to really grow your business, the more people that know about your business, to know that you're an option, will come and find you or find you to actually purchase a sale. And so, yeah, that's not as clear cut as like, we did 10 hours of this marketing and it led to this many dollars. Um, it's a little trickier than that, but there is a benefit of, growing that and each month, whether it's your brand through social media or whatever, where it can lead to that. It's just a much longer time scale where you can actually quantify that. Um, so that's always the challenge. But social media, you know, it's generally, different channels work better for certain industries, and there is crossover. But the cool thing about LinkedIn, for example, there's business owners on LinkedIn. The people that are active on LinkedIn are usually business people. So there's that to actually like message them or post content in front of them to show value. There's that advantage in B2B. And then there's a lot of like B2C that, when you're trying to have like an impulse buy or a shorter sales cycle, you could post stuff on like LinkedIn, or I'm sorry, on Instagram or Facebook or something like that, and have like that, like, this is a cool thing. You can actually lead that to a business a little bit quicker, but still it's all about creating that brand. So, which is really hard to do when it comes to like tying to revenue.
Can we talk about, by the way, can we talk about the level of masochism that is required to promote SEO services? What that looks like? I mean, I don't know about you, but I get probably 10 LinkedIn messages and about 20 emails from SEO providers that
Oh yeah.
clearly are not realizing that if I were
Yeah,
looking
I
for
mean,
SEO services, I
I
would
do
be
too.
Googling.
So like yeah, I mean, I do too, and like it's a tough to, and that's like outreach, right? So like, outreach gets pretty ugly in SEO, and that's probably the one of the worst things about being an SEO in the SEO world is like you already have like that scumbag reputation because like, are you the guy that's been messaging me or DMing me or emailing me or calling me every day saying I need to buy backlinks or something related to SEO. So yeah, I mean that's tough. So the way I do it is like I just try to provide thought leadership through tips. So like I do a lot of DIY, do it yourself type of SEO type of content. And for me, knowing that SEO is really freaking hard and it takes a lot of work that no one has time to do, whether you're a business owner or a freaking marketer, you're most likely going to hire an SEO person. And really that comes down to is whether you want to hire an employee that costs a ton, or do you want to hire an agency for like 10% of the cost, right? And so that's really where I come in. But yeah, I just try to do it through providing tips and thought leadership and stuff like that.
I just
So,
imagine an SEO agency's salesperson putting together an email that goes something like, "Hello, Mr. Valued Potential Customer. I am here to pitch you on SEO services that are clearly not working for me to generate your business. So, how would you like to sign up for a program that I can't show you results for the next 6 months?"
that is true.
That's the pitch. That's the pitch.
Yes.
I'm reaching out to you because you haven't found me through your Google searches. Um, and I'm selling you something that you have to pay for 6 months up front that you're not going to see any
Yeah.
results for. And then potentially not be able to attribute any sales back to what I'm doing. So, what do you think?
It is a bit tricky. No matter what, like if you're, I don't care who you are, if you're an SEO agency, a social media agency, or whatever that is, like for most the case, like your whatever channel that you offer, you need more than one specific thing for most cases, right? So, um, uh, can you get sales just by SEO only? Well, sure you can, but it's going to take a long freaking time. So maybe do some ads like at the beginning with SEO, and once you get maybe some results from your ads, and then once SEO starts to build and you're getting business that way, then you can reduce your ad budget and then focus a little more on SEO or bring in something else like maybe email marketing where you can retarget those or reach out to people that maybe have like opt in somehow through your SEO and your advertising campaigns that didn't lead to a sale. So there's all those different metrics, but to claim like one thing is better than another, that's not something I would do. I always like make sure you do everything. Just like I'm going to make sure we do one thing very, very well, and it's going to tie into everything else that you're doing. So that's really how I survive.
Nice. And you know that most of the SEO providers that are reaching out via email, and LinkedIn are probably just using Chat GPT to generate your
Yes,
content. So that's the frightening part that scares me.
exactly. Awesome. Yeah, that's very true. And that's probably going to be a good topic for our next conversation, maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to end on this? It's been 40 minutes.
Um, no, I mean, this is a good conversation. I'm trying to think of a good rant right now, and I think I do have a rant about Chat GPT actually.
Do it.
Um, because
Reels rant. Oh.
Jesse actually used ChatGPT to put together some notes for this podcast on B2B versus B2C marketing. And I see that according to ChatGPT, B2C companies have more opportunities to experiment with new marketing channels and tactics. There's no citation for that at all. Like, I don't know where it got this, made this decision or assumption or whatever. It's completely untrue. I think that there's a ton of opportunities to experiment with different channels and tactics in B2B, and we see it all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and override ChatGPT on this one. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like some of the stuff that comes out of ChatGPT is just so generic. Like the next thing it says here is B2C customers are often more receptive to personalized omni-channel experiences that build brand affinity. Well, no shit. Fucking B2B clients want that too, you know? Like nobody wants generic advertising. Everybody wants personalized omni-channel experiences that build brand affinity. That's just marketing, whether it's B2B or B2C. So sorry, ChatGPT. I'm not buying it right now.
You know, it's funny is like when we were kids and the internet was not around, like there was that saying like if it's on TV, it must be true. And then the internet happened, and then at some point people were like, "Hey, if it's on the internet, it must be true." Now, like the way just from your own proof, it was on AI, then it must be true, or if it was on ChatGPT, it must be true. Those are
That's
the new sayings for our AI age, right?
that to me is the frightening part, right? Because we're talking about building trust and credibility, and there's a tremendous amount of data that goes into ChatGPT, right? Their claim
Mhm.
is something like 500 million data points for every like decision that you ask for, and then you ask it a simple question like that, and I mean, it's not wrong per se, but it's also not really completely correct. So the fact
Mhm.
that we have this like trust in this AI tool that can lead us astray in terms of like what works and what doesn't. I've been using ChatGPT as a tool to validate some of my ideas, essentially,
Mhm.
which is really interesting, right? Like I could come up with a plan, and let's say we're launching a new law office or something like that, and I have a new location launch plan in my mind. I could theoretically plug that in and ask ChatGPT, like, am I on the right track? Am I missing anything? And it can provide some different ideas, but like you have to double check everything essentially because some of the stuff it spits out is very generic. It's obviously not doesn't take into account what your organization is doing, what your sales life cycle is like. So unless you put in a million different variables, if you just ask it generic questions like help me with a marketing plan for a fitness studio in Denver, it's just going to tell you do SEO, do advertising, do
Yeah.
like reviews, and it's not super helpful, but I think it could be actually harmful. And I think there's parts of me that say we are losing some of the credibility in terms of our expertise in doing things from experience, and uh, it's going to be an interesting challenge to see where this goes because there's a lot of DIY business owners that want to do DIY marketing out there, and now they finally see the perfect solution where they don't need a marketing guy. They can just go on Chat
Right.
GPT, ask it a question, and they'll tell them how to do everything or whatever. And I kind of it does concern me that it may be misleading some people in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to predict. I do think like at least in the B2B space, I think the trust is going to be like not what not what like something says. It's like what's your opinion on it. And so if you have like what's your opinion on whatever subject that is. I think people want to hear from like a thought leader, of someone who's actually has the brand or personal brand credibility, and then what's their spin on things and what's their opinion on things. I think that's going to be, at least in the B2B world, kind of like how you kind of build trust. Because if with more and more people that are using like an AI platform, you're, who knows what factual stuff. So there's a lot of there's a difference between saying this is how you do something, right? Like in a piece of content, versus what I do a lot for my SEO is like, this is how I do it. And this is how I do it. From my experience, this is how I do it. Could be totally wrong, but this is how I do it and why,
Yeah.
right? And so that's how I try to make myself different from a very factual thing that could be relied on, either something that's super credible or most likely a tool like ChatGPT.
Love that. Love that.
Yeah. It's what different way. That's how I've responded to it, at least. All right, man. Anything else you want to end with?
Yeah, let's finish our beers and I'll see you in a year.
Sounds good, dude. Awesome. All right, that was the Brands and Brews Marketing Podcast. Follow us on Spotify. Give us a thumb up, and tell Kirill that maybe he should bump up his appearances to 2 times a year. And follow him on LinkedIn and do that for us. That'd be super helpful.
Like and smash that subscribe button to help Jesse generate SEO leads. By the way, I think I saw that we had over like 1,000 listeners or something, which is actually pretty insane considering this is supposed to be like a joke podcast. So
it was. Yes. Awesome, man. Hey, thanks.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for coming on.
Yep.
All right.
Talk soon.